Andrew Chamberlain. It's nice to see you. I know it's not morning for you, but hello.
Hi, how you doing? It's good to see you this week as
I'm
well. Absolutely.
I'm doing well. We have a very special guest, Susan Avery. She got the black memo. It does look like we're all about to rob a bank, but excited that we're all together. Susan, Certified Association Executive, of course, and CEO of the Performance Plastics Association. So glad you could join us this morning. Um, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for
Very
having
good.
me.
I will say, I'll admit to everyone that we've never met. I don't know you. I actually learned about you from the Collaborate community postings, and you shared something online that really resonated with me. And it was about the need for and the rarity of support for trade associations and those 501(c)(6) entities that serve an industry or a member company type structure that I agree. I think often becomes kind of the forgotten format, the redheaded stepchild of the association world. Andrew, don't laugh. You guys have trade associations, and they're definitely kind of separate from the membership bodies. What does it look like for you? We're 501(c)(3) or 501(c)(6). How do you guys differentiate between the two in the UK?
Well, what 501c3 is what? Sorry, you mean these are just letters and numbers.
So a
501c3,
membership association, like let's
yeah,
say a medical society
yeah,
where the member is a
mm-hmm,
doctor or an individual professional
yeah,
versus a company membership. So you are
yeah,
the metal
yeah,
manufacturers,
mm-hmm,
whatever, but you're
yeah,
companies and you're representing an industry. How do you guys differentiate
yeah.
and what does that look like?
Well, we don't differentiate them in the numerical terms, but we definitely have a clear split over here in terms of the professional membership bodies that are focused on supporting the individual. They have a very, they have an emphasis on individual personal professional development, networking that enhances your career and your ability to function in whichever career you are in. And then we do have trade associations that exist to provide advocacy on behalf of their members on behalf of a wider industry. Um, I don't know. It's difficult to say how I mean, they on the surface, they by and large sort of offer pretty much the same value proposition, but I think once you kind of
You
dig
think?
into it, yeah, I think in the UK they do.
So
But we can get into that.
yeah, I want to ask Susan. So you guys tell me about the performance plastics. What's that industry look like? What's your membership look like? How long have you
Sure.
been on the trade association side of things?
Well, I've been in the business now for about 28 years. I spent the first third of my uh, time in association management on an individual membership association. And so I've been with IAPD now for going on 20 years.
Oh, wow,
And
congratulations.
oh, well, thank you. So IAPD is an association for performance plastics, which is different than the single-use plastics. So we're more of the industrial engineering grade plastics.
Okay.
And so our members are manufacturers, distributors, fabricators, recyclers of performance plastics. And so we're about 250 companies worldwide, primarily most of our companies are in North America, but they have global presence, and so some of them are headquartered um, around the world as well. So, but that's headquarter companies, right? So that's not including the divisions, the branches, and all of the locations.
Yeah. So with the global reach, it must actually be more difficult to sell what usually is the primary value proposition for trade associations, which is advocacy. Let's
Right.
unify our industry's voice, let's speak together and make sure we're heard, we're protected, we're advancing our needs. How do you then sell membership with that? Do you guys advocate? I mean, most of trade associations, I think that's their main thing. How do you guys factor that in?
Well, we do lobby. We do lobby at the U.S. federal level, but that's a little bit of a misnomer. So advocacy is just one part of what trade associations do. there are some trade associations that's their primary value, but we are what is considered a supply chain association, and so advocacy is just one part. There's associations that primarily are about the trade show. There's associations that are about codes and standards and setting codes and standards at that level. So we're a little bit, we don't do codes and standards, but the supply chain piece means that we're more of the commerce side of the equation, even though we do advocacy at the federal level. But to answer your question specifically, we've had to narrow our focus on the U.S. Federal advocacy because we just simply don't have those resources, right? You have to stop and start somewhere. So our focus on our membership really is for those global level companies. We focus on the materials that go through the North American distribution supply chain. And so that supply chain focus really then focuses on that North American distribution supply chain. And
I would think on a supply chain sense, a majority, if not all of your members are therefore members of another association.
right. And so, to further kind of clarify some of your comments at the beginning, there are associations that do service trade associations, but they're industry specific, right? So there's the National Association of Manufacturers that have a council of manufacturing associations. There's the National Wholesaler Distributors Association that has a group for the trade associations within that space. And I know that we're going to get to it, but they have conferences and such for the CEOs and the staff of the trade associations within that space. But it's a little bit different than your American Society of Association Executives, where it's looking at really representing the body of knowledge for the profession of association management. And I think that's sort of the miss that was my comments on the Collaborate.
Right, right. And you and I have both volunteered and been a part of ASAE. We're both CAE certification holders. And as a member of the ASAE research committee, I think you got to see what the organization was digging into or focused on for the future. And as you mentioned, you highlighted the missed opportunity around trade associations. And so often we are finding those associations of associations within industries,
Right.
but nothing as broad. How do you guys support trade associations, Andrew? What's the magic over there?
Well, we have in the UK, we have the Trade Association Forum, which is the trade association for trade associations. We recognize the differentiators between the individual professional membership and the needs and requirements that you have at that level versus the needs and requirements at an industry level or a trade level. I think probably the Trade Association Forum, I mean, it does an excellent job. I've been a supporter of TAF for a long time. I think, as is always the case, with any trade association, and I know you've mentioned that there are different networks for distributors, manufacturers, suppliers, etc. And I understand that, how you've described your particular focus. But I think one of the issues that we have over here is that I think TAF in particular tries or needs to or wants to be everything to everybody. And I think as a result, you end up not really, often you end up in a scenario where you're not pleasing very many people because, you think of an association that supports distributors, their needs are very, very different. Their expectations are different to manufacturers, to contractors in an industry, for example. And so I think that's one of the challenges they have, one of the headaches they have as a network of networks is who are we actually talking for and about what? That's a constant sort of headache. And I think that's at a sort of macro level, I think that's a headache that all trade associations have to deal with because there are so many a trade association's audience is so very large. Even if you're focused in a particular, as you are, in distribution and the supply chain, it's still a
Yeah.
broad network of
Yeah.
interested parties within that supply chain, and therefore
Yeah.
your membership is broad as well, and will have very different expectations and needs and demands of the trade association. And I think that's missed a lot of times. I think that it's much easier to focus on the individual. It's much easier to say,
Yeah.
well, as an individual, you need these skills, those skills, and this expertise, and we can provide that for you. But then to have to sort of support quite a broad church of interests is a perennial headache, I think, within trade
Yeah.
associations.
What? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please, Susan, go.
Yeah, well, and I don't disagree with you, Andrew. I think that there's an opportunity for a both and.
Hmm.
Ironically, I do have experience managing European trade associations. I managed our sister association in Europe for 9 years through our subsidiary. Um, but I think what I'm kind of thinking about is I think that the sort of specialty representation, for example, as I referenced NAM and NAW, the manufacturing and the distribution sort of specialized area, those are invaluable, right? I think um, there's certain conversations and areas that a broad association like ASAE could not replicate, right?
Sure.
Um, but I think from the broader perspective that an ASAE really could fill that I think is missing today is that true thought leadership that's not being done. And let me explain. We accept governance models that may or may not be working. And I call it, and it's not a fancy name, but it's the masses are doing it, so it must be right.
Hmm.
Most of our best practices are because enough of us are doing it, and we go out and we study it, and we
Yeah.
say hundreds of associations are doing it, and they haven't gone bankrupt yet. So therefore, it
So it's not
must
best practices, it's broad practices.
right. And when's the last time we've gotten 200 or 300, longtime association CEOs in a room and said, "Is this working? I
Mm,
mean,
Right.
hmm.
is this really the
Right.
right way to do it?
Right.
Have
Right.
we gotten honest about what is actually working? No, we kind of pick, and this is not a slam on ASAE or consultants or academia, but we've not gotten honest. Every few years, a new book comes out or a new study comes out, and it's the next best thing, and it's prescriptive.
Mm.
And if we're not doing it, somehow we're not wrong. And
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
my board wants to know what other associations are doing, but are we looking under that hood and really saying, is this truly working?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at some point, I just stopped bringing it to them,
Yeah.
and and
Well,
and that's what I'm talking about.
and I struggle with the validity of a lot of that research. Even if it is supposedly representative, you then look at how many of those respondents are with trade associations. It's
Exactly.
a very, very small number. And to Andrew's point, when you are a big tent, you're trying to be a lot of things to a lot of people across an entire industry. It can be difficult. I love the nuance of that. I love the complexity of getting to drill into a company and serve the principal, and then serve the education person, and then serve the business development person differently.
Right.
But that is more difficult. That is harder than the membership side, and you just don't see the research trying to even dig into it. The broadest
Absolutely.
swath is taken, and the easiest cut of the research is usually what's provided. How do we get more trade association specific material? And maybe it's not even the point. Maybe the point to your suggestion is that we need case studies more than we need popularity contests.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we had um, we had a program, and it's been bought up by CEO Update, and that was Prometheus, where it was all about convening spaces, right, for association CEOs and executives to come together and sort of talk big questions. For me, it's about convening spaces. Um, but but I think that the shift that needs to happen, I think in ASAE, and I'll just share a quick story again. Um, Years ago, well, it wasn't that long ago, it was just pre-pandemic. I was on as a representative of the research committee on the ASAE conference content committee. Basically, I don't remember if that's exactly what it was called, but in that process, the the conference committee was in the big question that they were hearing through the evaluations that the CEOs wanted their own tracks. They wanted to be able to have conversations at the conference and talk amongst themselves. That was that they weren't feeling confident that they could have the kind of conversations in ASAE that they needed. But in that space, during the day and a half meeting, they had the young professionals that said, "Well, you can't keep us out of that room. How are we going to learn from the CEOs?"
Mm.
And what do you think happened?
They let him in.
Let him in.
They would
Yeah.
not have a separate track
Yeah.
for the CEOs. So, so my point being is that unless we have those spaces to where we can start having these big conversations and start bringing people in a room and start what is the governance of the future? I'm tired of looking backwards. I
Yeah.
want to have real
Mm-hmm.
conversations about
Mhm.
what does an association of the future look forward. And I'd like to have some trade associations in the room for that. I'm not saying that we're completely different, but I can tell you my job today and what it takes to be a trade association CEO today compared to 5 years ago, 10
Yeah.
years ago, 15 years ago is so completely different,
Yeah.
is completely different. And I don't know that. And I, again, I worked for almost 10 years as an individual membership association number two, and then their for-profit subsidiary CEO. It is night and day,
Yeah.
night and day.
Yeah.
It's
How has that role changed in this, just let's just say these last 5, 10 years? How has your scope, your responsibility, your day-to-day changed the most as a trade association CEO?
Very much, it is much more entrepreneurial. The risk profile is very different. It used to be that there was a lot more bandwidth for having that. They looked at it much more mission driven. Now it is very little mission driven, much
it's
more
immediate.
company running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I had a chat with a colleague, a chief executive of Trade Association over here just earlier this week, and we were talking about the immediacy of everything. Um, and I think for me, look, reflecting on the last, yeah, maybe 5 years, but definitely 10 years, is everything is immediate. Our communications, our decision making, our our delivery mechanisms. It needs everything. There's an expectation. Everything must be delivered highly accessible, highly
Yeah.
immediately available to me. And we've done many different podcast episodes around attention economics and digital literacy, all of which are sort of contributing to on digital expectations, all of which have contributed to
Yeah.
a system that demands our attention and our response immediately. And I think the example where you made there about previously where you said, young professionals were saying we can't have us in the room. We have to have us in the room. I think the decision to have them in the space was simply another example of we've got to make an immediate decision. And it was, I would argue, not necessarily the correct decision at that
It was
time.
probably a
But
commercial decision. I
it
mean, it
was,
was
yeah. And I think we're all And the irony being that we've had other episodes where we've spoken about how AI is going to solve all our problems. Technology is driving everything, and that's cool because I'm going to have so much more time to think and be creative and sit down and just give me space. And we don't. The reality is, everything is becoming more and more and more and more a microcosm of immediacy. Everything, and I think that, and if we're experiencing that as membership professionals, trade association professionals, we're experiencing it because within trade associations, our members are experiencing that as well.
Absolutely.
And they are, the speed with which in any industry is working now is incomparable to 10 years ago. And I
That's right.
think and I think the point you make is highly valid, which is we have an obligation as trade association chief executives, trade association leaders, we have an obligation to our members on their behalf almost to take that moment and say, whoa, can we just have a little less immediacy and can we have a little bit more contemplation, please? And some time to reflect. And I think the biggest shortcoming at the moment, and I wrote an article about it a couple of weeks ago, was we're not just with the media, we're always available. There's an expectation that we've always got to be switched on and we've always got to be available. And that
Well,
just
especially
just
serving
feeds the
multiple
beast.
regions, multiple time
Exactly,
zones, multiple
exactly.
countries.
It's feeding the beast. And I think what Susan is describing here is, that those issues, but put understood within a trade association context. I think it's a much bigger issue, and that we will start to see it not just affect trade associations. I think we're starting to see it affect professional membership bodies as well, learned institutes, learned societies as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that both sides, I don't mean to make it sides, but both the individual membership and the industry trade representation. I think those are some of those topics that we as association leaders can have different perspectives on, but we're both being impacted by.
Mm, mm.
And our members is maybe more so at the trade association space. The demands upon them, the expectations they have of us. I mean, I have clients who the dues are in the seven figures, and
Yeah,
their members, rightfully so, have very, very high expectations for what the association delivers, and that's a very challenging environment, especially with the fewer big members you have. Those are some very substantial masters to keep happy and to serve. And I think that for me is the biggest difference between the two sides is the smaller number of members, the larger amount of money you're getting from members, and then the higher expectations that you have, but the need to serve the diversity within their own corporate structure or their industry. What do you experience, having seen both sides, Susan? What's the biggest difference for you between the two?
If I were to simplify it, I would say um, everything. It's the very nature of the primary relationship being with the company versus the individual. It affects the decision to join, the
Oh
decision
yeah.
to serve, um, how you recruit for your board,
How
the
you store the data in the database.
right,
It's everything.
the when I'm looking at succession planning for my leadership, um, no matter how much we would like to say that it's a competency-based board, it's very much politics first, right? It's who are the companies that you need to make
Who
sure that
needs to
the
be at the table?
association, to make sure that you've got the right companies, it's, right market balance, the perspectives, then it's the competency from there, but then most likely it's the leaders of the companies and who they want to represent them, um, how you look at membership retention. Um, then, I look at the very problems and, think about the Foresight Works work. And I look at the industry drivers. Most of those things,
yeah,
if on the top 10, 15 things that trade associations are concerned about the future, most of those things would not even hit the top
no,
10.
No,
Um,
no,
and,
absolutely.
number one, industry consolidation. Number two,
Yeah,
private equity and all the
yeah.
things that are listed there, the things that are listed under private equity, they missed the mark. I mean, when I think about those things, membership models, and are the membership models that we're doing, and I'm not talking about how we assess dues, but membership models,
Mm,
what are membership models even going to look like in a trade
Yeah.
association? I mean, so
yeah.
when I talk fundamentally, our governance structures, our membership structures, our how we attract and retain members, and how do we take this, the generational and shift from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 generation and one from the next. I mean, fundamentally, our associations where they used to be pretty similar, I mean, the
Mhm.
differences are becoming more
Mm,
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then today, how do we train this next? How do we start our succession plans internally, right?
Yeah.
Because now, where I used to be able to start thinking about taking a marketing director, someone that was in marketing, and maybe think about them being my successor, I need to take them through an entire MBA program to be able to even think about it. They have to have so many skills now to
Yeah.
even think about being a trade association CEO. And
Yeah.
they need to become an industry expert in this industry because that's
Yeah.
what this job demands.
Right.
Long
Andrew,
answer.
we haven't talked about what white papers we want to do in 2026. Maybe
I
we
think
need
we
to
know the first
dedicate
one.
and dive
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
an element here. I know, the research committee of ASAE, they're doing their thing, the Foresight Works, content that you mentioned, Susan, very valuable for some, for many
Right.
perspectives, but did miss the opportunity to really address trade associations and the unique uh, market realities, the shifts, the changing disruptions. So maybe we need to take a bite
Yeah.
at this apple.
Let's do it. I'm up for it. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we've covered a lot. I don't know exactly where we dive in, but
Well, maybe
specific
it's a
to the
series.
governance
We maybe
piece.
maybe we do a series of white papers around because actually that's not fair to just say trade associations, there you go. That's you
Well, no,
taken
that's
care
not the
of.
thing. We're not just a big
Exactly.
bucket. There's
Exactly. Is we got to recognize the nuances and the subtleties and the significant differences
Ooh, maybe
in the sector.
2026 can be the year of the trade association research.
I think you would get a lot of people really interested in that.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
This is a
And for
big, this is a big conversation, and not the only one that feels this way.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think maybe I mean, governance, I'm thinking back to your email from October, and there's governance, there's the membership models, volunteerism, those external market impacts, which is so dramatic for the membership. Maybe we need to take a little sample and see what people need. But I think 2026 could be the year of the trade association, Andrew. I think
Okay.
we have our new calling.
Okay. Let's do it. Done.
Yay, yay.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for, like I said, kind of bringing to light some of the concerns I've always had and those identifying the opportunities and the lack of resources that have been more broadly available to the management, the association leadership environment. I don't think we can replicate what comes in the industry specific space.
Wouldn't
Um,
need to.
no, we don't need to let those industries, those associations of associations within industries are already there.
They're
And
phenomenal.
I hope in all industries they exist. But I think there's a great opportunity here to have some very different conversations. And I think back, it's not about what's just happening in most places or what's happening most broadly or what's happened for the longest amount of time. It's what needs to happen moving forward. And we may not have the answers. We may just be able to evaluate experiments and help people define pilots and opportunities to try, because I don't think anyone's found the perfect or the right answer or the exact example that we should be promoting. I think this is much more of a moving and evolving target. So I'm excited and so appreciate your contributions, and welcome to the Association Transformation family. We'll definitely have you back when we get ready to roll some of this out and be in touch as we put it all together. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to reading some of your white papers.
This is great. Andrew, can you get Taft to sponsor us real quick? Okay, that laugh tells me what I need to know. Until then, put your members and your mission first.